And we're live. So welcome everybody to the book presentation for Being Imposed Upon. This is just a conversation organized by Frame of Framed in Amsterdam, which is a platform for contemporary art, visual culture, and critical theory and practice. And I'm really excited about this event, which is being organized as part of our action research on decolonial practice and decolonial history. So we're calling this a presentation because the book was already published last year, and it's available in Dutch and French, and you can purchase it through the publiekeacties website or through the publisher Onomatopoeia, and links for that will be available in the live YouTube chat. And this is a publication described as a timeless love letter and manual by and for Black women, with contributions from various writers, poets, activists, and thinkers. And I'm really happy to say that we're joined today by one of the editors of the book, Gia Abrassart, and another one of the contributors, Anne Wetsi Mpoma. Gia is an independent journalist and activist of decolonial culture, and in 2018 she opened Café Congo, a cultural third space for communities from the African diaspora in Belgium, and as well as the feminist and queer communities. And her blog, Café Congo, also invites people to rethink the Belgian and Congolese relations. Wetsi is an art historian, curator, author, as well as director and founder of the Wetsi Art Gallery. And this gallery is an interdependent space that builds bridges with diverse audiences by showing the work of artists marginalized because of their race, gender, sexual orientation, ethnic origin, and/or disability. And our conversation today is moderated by Dr. Bambi Ceuppens, who is a researcher, linguist, historian, and social anthropologist. And since 2007, she has been a senior researcher and curator at the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Tervuren, Belgium. So welcome everyone, thank you so much for coming, and I'll pass it over to you.
Hello. Okay, who's going to dance first?
Well, I don't know. Who would like to start? Wetsi? Yeah?
Oh, me? Okay.
Yes.
So shall I introduce myself? No, she's just done it. So yeah, my name is Anne Wetsi Mpoma. I get named by my second first name, Wetsi, most of the time. I participated into the writings of this collective, yeah, I don't know if you can see it, collective book. And my part was, thank you, my part was really about writing about how to organize resistance into the context, into the post-colonial context that we live into in Belgium today. And in this contribution, I speak about things that I like to talk about most of the time. It's about the coloniality of the powers and of the interrelationships in between the institutions and the racialized publics. By institution, I mean museum, of course, but also art schools or universities, or even art galleries are also institutions. You have art galleries who have existed for decades and who really work as institutions in Brussels. I won't say any name, but I mean, there are big galleries, and I'm really questioning, how, for example, in a museum, how the racialized public of Belgium are really being taken into account when it comes about interacting with those institutions, with the museums as a public first, or the content of the museums, or the objects that are exhibited into the museums also sought for this type of publics. I know that as a, as a citizen, when I go into museums, I'm sometimes really being shocked by how certain pieces are being shown, and this has to do with my culture, and also the knowledge that I have of this culture, where I can really feel disrespected by the way that some objects are being shown in some museum. And it's not only into ethnographic museums, it can also be in different type of institutions. I'm also questioning the notion of universalism, because most of the time, or very often, when we speak about, yeah, maybe it would be interesting to also think about Black people as a general public, then the answer might be something like, yeah, but a museum are intended to be friendly to everyone, not only to Black people. So this question is this question about universalism is also questioned. I also give an example on how the institutions have the tendency to work with Black artists, Black thinkers, and in Belgium, and I give the example of Laura Nzengiyumva, who is the author of People. And she's also the author of performances where she questions the role of Sint Nicholas in Belgium, and of course, Sint Nicholas and Zwarte Piet. I also question the role of the art school and how is racism also present into the art school in the way that when it's about time of talking about great artists, when it's time of talking about art history, most of the time we only speak about white, European, or Occidental artists, and the artists. The history of the African artists is totally invisible, and the history of the artists of the diaspora is even more invisible from this narrative. And I also question what would be the residue of the colonialism into the way that the African culture is being perceived in the today's society. So these are the big questions that I think I go through into this essay. And Gia, if you want to speak about what you do.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I'm working as a freelance journalist, independent journalist, more cultural African culture, diaspora, and I'm also an activist due to the urgency of all these decolonial, post-colonial actions and reactions. I have founded Café Congo in 2018. It's a third space. It's really a refuge, a third space. How can I say? In marge, it's not a sponsorship. It's really a place where solidarities, resistance, and artistic creations are honored. We try to welcome a lot of different artists from different backgrounds. Most of them are from Afro-descent people, let's say that, but they are mixed with a lot of different cultural backgrounds, and it creates something unique in Brussels, I would say. And I've created that after my studies in journalism at the University of Brussels, ULB, because I have noticed for now many years that the notion of reparation as an act of recognition and acknowledgement from the authorities, from the institutions regarding the triangle Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi, which are and where the former colonies of Belgium I have noticed as a young journalist, when I was still studying the lack of visibility of the diaspora in the media in Belgium, that sometimes we don't have to expect actions of reparations, which can be memorial reparation or financial reparation. Sometimes we don't have to expect anything from the government, from the authorities, especially when they did nothing except trying to erase and deny sometimes the Belgian colonial past. So I have created that blog, Café Congo, which was more, a website to invite the audience, the public, to think about the Belgo-Congolese relationships through an art, through a vision through an artistic visions. It was in 2013. And 5 years later, I realized that we do need to do stuff by us, for us. And the notion of that physical space, that material space, was really an emergency. I don't have money. And my politics, my personal vision is that I won't ask any money from the authorities. Because as you can see now in France, the associations, Afro-Descent Association and other, who are organizing non-Mexicity meetings, they can't keep on doing that. So they will be deleted from the official existence or recognition. Sorry, there is a cat coming in that political game tonight, so I have to try to protect my computer. But so it's really important for me. Since the beginning, I didn't ask and I didn't apply to receive money from the government, because I knew that sooner than later I would be, I will get problems, because we are talking about different topics, which can be restitution of stolen artifacts, which can be the financial reparation of the force publique, which were who are the soldier, the Congolese soldier, to summarize, who helped Belgium in the First and the Second World War. It can be how to dismantle the colonial status in the public space of Belgium. So as soon as you are talking and touching these taboo topics in Belgium, it can be dangerous, or you can receive pressure coming from the authorities, especially if you receive public money. And I completely understand that. So the politics was, okay, I'm renting a huge space in a former post-industrial building. And then we tried, because Anne Wetsi Gallery joined me 1 year later, to say, okay, how we can create a political sorority. We don't need to be friends to be political sisters, but we do need have common visions, and we do need to sustain us regarding because the system first, the society and the institution, they are stronger than us. We don't have money, but we have the network, we have the creativity, and we have also the legitimacy. Now we have the legitimacy to do what we want when we want. We are not anymore in a kind of negotiations, relationship with the institution or the authorities regarding the colonial past of Belgium. Now we do, and we ask recognition to receive one day memorial and financial reparation. And yes, I can notice since 2010, when I finished my master in journalism regarding the lack of visibility of the Afro-Descent people in the media, and also, which means also in the public space, in the institutions, regarding the administrative council, through the medium of the arts, which is Café Congo. Café Congo is dedicated to the artists and the culture and the art. We can feel there is, there is doors which are opening. We can feel that, okay, decolonial is a buzzword. Okay, we can feel that there are transnational connections with Netherlands, France, Portugal, UK, even US. So we can feel that there is like a momentum of awareness about, okay, it's no, we don't want that anymore. Our parents, especially my mother, who came when she was 19 in the 60s, they do all properly the acculturation, alienation. They try the best to be, you know, in harmony with the Belgium, and you know, erasing even the issue, the racial issue, and all this issue which can provoke like silence or denial or even uncomfort, you know. So now we are the generation in the 40s that we have tried our best to say, okay, let's wait slowly, let's create and try to be the best students or the best personalities to be recognized by the authorities in the cultural institution, for example. It didn't work. And now you have the new generation, especially with COVID, so nobody wants to wait for anymore for anything, who says, we don't want to become like you, we want to do more, better, and we feel that we won't succeed because if you didn't succeed, you, big sister, big brother, we won't succeed. So that's also very interesting with Café Congo, with Wetsi and all the artists that we are meeting all the time, we are creating with them, that some doors are starting to be opened. Yes, we can feel. And from that step, because associations and personalities are working for decades sometimes, sometimes without any money, any recognition. Some of them died, like François Kassango, who was running the radio program Africana. I'm just thinking about him, but there are so many who really dedicate their lives to create that kind of recognition. So I think through Café Congo, through the book of Being Imposed Upon, which is for the first time in Netherlands and in French, so both sides of Belgium, 18 women of color, 18 Black women and brown women who dedicated their vision, and they wrote that for themselves, for their sister, to be, you know, to create like, a scream, a song, a slam, a poet regarding freedom and what does it mean freedom for us. And like Nina Simone said in an interview, maybe to be free is not to be afraid for some minutes, from some hours. So that book, Being Imposed Upon, is for me. I have started with Café Congo, then we met a lot of people. We try to create with Wetsi Gallery and all the networks we have. And Being Imposed Upon with this all academics, author, artists, I think it's a nod, is really like a glorification or a recognition, you know, of what we are, our expertise, our desire, and we don't need to negotiate anymore for what we are or what we are supposed not to be or to be supposed to be. You know, it's it's more than a book. It's a masterpiece, I would say, in Belgium, because if you read that book, from that book, and there are 7 chapters. We started with Black female body, and then we went directly healing, public transmission, feminism, representation, autonomous spaces, and art and culture. We have chosen these 7 chapters. For us, I think it was the most important way to be, you know, and to be for us and by us. I try to give some guidelines or some details of the experience between Café Congo, Being Imposed Upon, and the necessity the urgency to decolonize the spirits, the minds, the public space, the institution in Belgium, but always in solidarity or transnationally or internationally with other associations and organizations. I think it's that political sorority for me even is sometimes very difficult to practice, because we have our own resilience in progress, we have our own traumas, but I think it's the only response that we can create to protect ourselves, each other.
Thanks very much. I was wondering whether perhaps Wetsi could also say something about the concept of political sisterhood that the book is basically about. But first, Djia, perhaps you can elaborate upon the title being imposed upon, as opposed indeed to the freedom and the independence that you talk about.
Yes, Hélène Debeuckelaere was the editor, for the French, for the Netherlands part, and I was the co-editor for the French part. So we have chosen that English title because it's quite complicated, the translation, the purest translation into French and into Netherlands. This, being imposed upon, it's that no more, we are what we are, and we are proud to be, what we are. But it's more than proud. It's maybe finally the confidence in the value that we feel about us. I can see in my family, around me, around in my network, that sometimes, we are doubting all the time. Are we enough? Oh, you need to be the first one. You need to ask money and to wait to be recognized. I know sometimes you need to have a white person to get money for your association because you are not enough reliable. And I think with that title being imposed upon, we have tried, because the impose normally is a strike.
Struck out.
Struck out. So finally it's just being, you could call the book Being, finally, because imposed upon, it's we don't want that anymore. For an example, in Jamaica, the notion of the importance of the words were also very important. And the former slaves, they said, yes, I understand you, master, because they didn't want to use I understand you, master. And that kind of notion with being imposed upon was in the same spirit, that we don't need to wait for any recognition, acknowledgement, or anything that maybe we were waiting for since the independence of Congo in June 1960s. Because last June 2020, it was the 60th anniversary of the independence of Congo. And for the first time, due to the situation in the US with the racist murder of George Floyd, and so many, even here in Belgium with different police brutalities and murders like Aline and others, for the first time, for the 60th anniversary of independence of Congo, we have felt, okay, now we keep the door, and we are not going to let anybody diminish us or let us down. We are what we are, being imposed upon, never again. It means that now it's like we can say that we are a kind of a lobby, but lobby, it means that we are sister keepers, we are brothers keeper. If I need strength, if I need advice, I can call the network. Sometimes it's not easy, sometimes we can fail, but mentally and in the heart, we are, finally. I think, I can feel that. I don't know for Wetsi, but...
Wetsi, would you like to pick up on that? Or would you like to say something about political sisterhood, which I started off with, or both?
Yeah, let me pick up on what Gia is saying about I think it's linked to the political sisterhood either, in the sense that, yeah, 2020 was the 60th anniversary of the independence of the Congo. And at the same time, when we listen to speeches of Aimé Césaire, when we listen to speeches of Frantz Fanon, we feel that what they say is so accurate and so contemporary. And it's difficult to tell yourself, okay, those people, it was 60 years ago and we are still in the same situation. That's really awkward. And when you read the speeches of Paul Panda Fernana, then it becomes really, really weird, because Paul Panda Fernana, it was even at the beginning of the 20th century. And still, what he was saying about the disrespect and the discrimination towards Congolese people is true today towards Black people in general. So starting from there, what do we do now? What do we do with this information as Black women, as activists, as art historian, as cultural entrepreneur? How do we do to create a new society, to be part of this new narrative? And, you know, because we are still alive and we need to live, we need to take a part into this society. And I think this is when and where Black female solidarity must come into account. I heard about an initiative that started in the US. Sorry, I have. And this initiative started in the US, and it's a collective of Black women who march, they walk in the streets. And when they do so, they do it first for their health, because walking prevents some illnesses, heart disease. And when they do so, walking in the streets in the evening, it's also a sign of security for young boys who are also in the street, but who can also be molested by the police. And at the same time, they create conversations, they create bonds that make them more that give them support and that enable them to give them support to each other. And when we speak about the Belgian context, maybe it's not possible because you don't have neighborhoods with Black people only, where you can really organize this type of marching. But still, you have a space as Café Congo, where you can gather and when you can create discussions. So it's not exactly the same context, but the idea is still the same, because we are still facing the same type of problem. We need to, and we are being asked to be creative, to come with some proposition, to be part of the society, but at the same time, we are being discriminated as women and as Black persons. And we also need to heal from the traumas that our ancestors have been through, you know, because now we can, the epigenetic scientists, they found out that you still have traces of the traumas that your ancestors have been through into your DNA. So there are all those types of observations and studies now really enable us to be aware that we need to do something together. Maybe the question today is more, how can we do this into the Belgian context? That could be a real question, because when we talk about artists, okay, you have a group of artists, you have a group of art historians or curators. We can do something together, we can do projects together. We can also do some propositions for the public space, because we know that in Belgium, the public space needs to be decolonized. At least, I don't know if we can really decolonize the public space or anything at all, but we can do some decolonial action. So we can do that in between artists, in between some groups of people, but how can we really create solidarity in between us, in between Black women in general? That's another question. Maybe a place like Café Congo could be a part of the solution, I think.
Now, Gia, you talked about the invisibility of people of African descent in the media. Wetsi, you talked about the fact that in terms of museum and art galleries, diasporic Africans do not even seem to exist.
Nope.
So it appears to be that one way or the other, Africans on the continent are more visible, or do you agree with that? Or that Belgians tend to pay more attention to Africans who live far away in Africa than to the descendants of Africans who live in Belgium. Do you agree with that or not? And what do you think accounts indeed for that invisibility of that group that has this shared colonial past with Belgium, and perhaps also in terms of art, this much larger interest in so-called ethnographic art from Congo, say, than contemporary art made by artists of Congolese descent living in Belgium?
It's a big question. Who wants to start?
Maybe I can start with because now I have just opened a shop, a boutique in the center of Brussels, which is a kind of prolongation of Café Congo, but it's more entrepreneurship. It means that I'm selling fresh ginger that I'm producing in Café Congo. And my colleague Vanessa, she's producing a delicious coffee from Burundi. And starting with these two products, now we are selling also art, and some artists from Café Congo, some paintings, but also some antiques that we meet with different collectors in the neighborhood of the flea markets, let's say. And regarding the visibility of the contemporary African artists, let's just say the first question: to whom belong them? It means that a Black African artist, which which is who is living in the continent, usually he comes or he receives a visibility in Belgium or in Europe only if he has connection with a manager or head of galleries. They are most of the time white and men. If he tries to do by himself, it's quite impossible. So the visibility of an African artist coming from the continent or staying in the continent, it's just because they are white managers and white galleries in Europe. Regarding the diaspora, usually with the different white male collectioners that are meeting in Brussels, they are not really interested in them in the contemporary because it costs too much. It costs less in the continent. So there they prefer the classic art or ethnographic or primitive, I don't know which word you prefer, because there is more value in the classic African art than at least till the modern art. So it means till the 70s, 80s. But for the contemporary, the circle of the marchandization of the arts, especially contemporary African art or only tribal African art, to talk rudely, it belongs most of the time to white men. And every day I'm coping and talking to them. They are all old now, but they are they are making a lot of money, especially in Paris, London, and Brussels. So for me, the visibility is also how you can relate that, how you can translate that to the autonomy, to the financial autonomy of the artist based in Café Congo, Wetsi Gallery, or elsewhere. And till now, because ourselves we are not sponsored and we are not in a precarious state, but we can't say that we have money. So it's difficult, to deal in these huge auctions, dealing with collectioners who are playing also to increase the quotation of African artists by, selling between themselves. It's like once you know the secrets of a game, it's easy now to dismantle or to understand it and to do better. But when we talk about visibility, which visibility are we talking about? And if there is a visibility, it's linked to a white system or a white collectioner or a white institution. So the freedom, the notion of autonomy, financial autonomy, the notion of, okay, I can do what I want when I want, I don't give exclusivity with a kind of financial and cultural domination of these contemporary artists. We are not there yet. So I'm sure, and every day we are dealing that, okay, can I check your contracts? Oh yeah, because also the politics of to divide, to better control also these different artists, who are kind of competition. We can witness that, and we would like to renovate that and to restore a more ethic way of buying and selling these African artists based in Brussels or in Europe or elsewhere. But it's easier to cheat on the value of an artist when they are based in Africa or in Kinshasa, because you are going to give them 200 euros per month and they will be happy. Wow, Mr. X is giving me every month 200 or 500, can you imagine, Kinshasa? And he's cool. And in Belgium, it will be more difficult because it's more surrounded by, people who can protect the artists, which we try to do that kind of expertise and protection. But you see, Bambi, the question is tricky because it's not, we don't have, a comfortable response to that, because it's little gain between everybody. And if we don't work properly on the notion of decolonization and the recognition of what we are, what's the value of a contemporary or a primitive artist, if we don't recognize the restitution to honor, the spirits, the ancestor, and how the value was so huge, it's difficult after to talk about visibility and financial recognition for the current artists based in Brussels. I don't know, Wetsi. I have started with that point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first question was how do institutions in Belgium interact with African artists, whether they are from the diaspora, whether they are from the continent? And I would start with this. The point is that when we speak about Black people in general, white people in Belgium, but it's the same everywhere, they think that Black people are from another country, from another continent, maybe even from another planet, or maybe it's another race. They are not totally human. We still have those ideas into our heads. So they tend to look at Black people or African people as coming from abroad, coming from far, far, far away. So they go to Africa. That's the most simplest way. And then if they don't go to Africa, they look at Black Americans or African Americans, and then they look at Black people who speak English because it's trendy. So they go to the UK and then they go to France, and they really act as if there were no Black people, no African people in Belgium. It's really difficult to them to give us recognition and to give us the status of great artists with creativity, genius, You know, how many times did I hear that Picasso was a genius? Okay, probably, but then this genius, what was the inspiration of the genius? Maybe another genius, you know? But this is never said. This is never told. So you have this type of problems, and you also have the fact is that someone who grew up in the Congo and someone who grew up here, we don't especially have the same vision of life. Like I was born and I grew up here in Belgium. So I have the feeling that I have rights here, and that in Belgium, I am at my place, like this is my country. And in doing so, I may become a problem for Belgian people who are like, no, you're not from here because you have a black skin or you have a brown skin. And so they are less comfortable with someone like me than with someone who's like, yeah, I'm a foreigner here, and I can play the Zwarte Piet for you if you want, if you would like, because I don't care. Of course you don't care. And I don't want to stereotype people from the Congo but it's just, of course, it's easier for you not to care because you were not born here, you didn't go to school here, so you don't know what it is being a child in a school, being the only black person in the room, and you know, having these Zwarte Piets coming in. You know, you don't know this, what is this feeling, and you don't know what is this feeling like from 15 November, you know that Zwarte Piet is coming back, and you start to do nightmares. You don't know that, you don't have this experience. So of course, now you can say, yeah, but now you are an adult, why do you still talk about it? Yeah, because I have a child, you know, and I have nephews, and there are other kids who are still going to school and facing this type of realities. But to also come back to the topic, to the question, I also think that something that is also easier for people or institutions in general to look at African people on the continent, on African artists, is that they will also bring this type of Africanity, but I would say they are more in touch with the African culture, and they might have something more exotic or maybe different, or something that is being more perceived as different than production of the people from the diaspora. Sometimes I have when I show the artworks of the artists I work with to collectors, most of the time white collectors, they would say, why would I buy this? Because it could have been done by a white artist. Yeah, I know. It sounds strange, but it's not something that I have heard only once. No, it's really something common. Why would I buy this? It looks like it could have been done by a white artist. So they're not interested into it. You know, you have this type of exotization, like as Gia mentioned it. Why would I? And also, I think the question behind that is, why would I buy something €1,000 to a black artist when the white artist sells it for the same price? If I go to African artists, it's because they're cheaper. That's also something that we have to know when we speak about auctions. Into auctions, you know, you have this trend over contemporary African art today. But why? It's because it's less expensive and people are still very creative. You still have a very dynamic production. So this is why people are interested into it, at least white people. When we could when you have a collector with African descent, from African descent, maybe he when he buys contemporary African art, it's also an investment, but there is also something more emotional, like oh, I also want to praise my culture, you know, I want to praise my origins. There is something like that. But yeah, and also I think that the people of the diaspora who grew up here, who were born here, they also they don't have I mean, there is a precarity existing, you know, and people coming with the migration trajectory. Sometimes they have less money, sometimes they have, you know, precarious situations, sometimes they have social positions, and they are being looked at as inferior people, when people from Africa who can travel, who have money, they come here and, you know, they belong to the upper class in the Congo or in Rwanda, for example. They belong to the upper class, and when they arrive here, they have the same speeches, they have the same type of conversation, you know, and they are not really angry because maybe they don't have reasons for being angry, when people who grew up here may have another or different story to tell. And those different stories to tell, not everyone wants to hear them. So I think the difference of perceptions in between African people from the continent, African people here, also comes from those situations that I have just described.
But simultaneously, you both seem to suggest that indeed African artists are discriminated in different ways, i.e. that those on the continent are being exploited, and that indeed they are being bought up by white collectors because they are cheaper. But simultaneously they are being exoticized. That's also part of the attraction. Whereas those living in Belgium are discriminated because they are not exotic enough, and because they actually ask the same rights also in terms of the prices that they ask for their artworks as white artists. And then, so my question is, in terms of decolonization, because Café Congo and Wetsi Art Gallery are third spaces, how important is it for them to become institutions in their own right, or for other institutions set up by Africans in Belgium to emerge to decolonizing the art scene for the benefit of African artists in Africa and here in Belgium?
I would start by saying that highlighting the fact that we do need institutions in Belgium, do need to support more the national artists, the local Afro-descent artists based in Belgium. We are used to organize big exhibitions in Brussels, in Belgium, and most of the time we are not honoring enough the national Afro-descent artists we have. We have a tendency to go and run and take artists coming from other countries, since we have very good potentiality of artists based in Brussels more and more. So that's the first notion that we have to pay attention. Institutions have to pay attention to mix, when they do exhibition, to mix national and international artists first, to create a balance of recognition, financial, and also for the curriculum vitae, that yes, Brussels is a very shining place where it's not too expensive. It's not Paris, not London, but most of the artists can feel comfortable here because it's accessible to most of them. Donc, first is how to pay attention to the local artists and to remunerate them at the same price as the foreigners, I would say, or the artists coming from other cities, because it's quite complicated for the local artists based in Brussels. They are all the time diminished in their quality, in their remuneration. Secondly, what I'm talking for Wetsi Gallery, but I think it's also important for the Belgium institution to buy and to put Afro-descent Belgium artists into public space, because we can feel that sometimes when artists didn't follow Lacan, just to say that word, because anyway, they are talented, the artists coming from Lacan, but I need to say something, but sometimes they are private, lineage, where people stay together and they are co-opted, to become an official artist recognized by, a certain milieu, a certain categories of institutions and galleries. I think it's really important to decolonize, that kind of audience who can receive new perspective, new and explore maybe new artists. So we have, at the end, for me, decolonize, the minds and decolonize, the institution, the cultural institution. It means that, and maybe the positive point of COVID is that due to the borders closed, we had to hire local artists, and some of the different festivals, they just, create with the artists who were in Brussels or in Belgium. So we discovered the quality and the potential of certain artists due to COVID, because we are so used to go outside to search for, the exceptionality. And also, I do think that sooner than later, in a very short term, we have to create like a platform of expertise, juridical, legal, and financial, to support the artists, who are completely lost sometimes regarding the contracts, the clause, because it's a eager middle height, comment on dit ça, un milieu quoi. C'est the capitalism on arts, the merchandisation on contemporary arts. People are really eager. They buy to invest and to create money. So sometimes the humanity, can be lost. And you can feel within the artists, amongst the artists, not especially based in Café Congo, that there could be a competitivity to be recognized and to be, supported by a very efficient artist and manager. Okay, I'm coming there to be recognized. So at the end, sometimes the notion of, just the creativity can be lost. And I think we can't avoid the gender and the racial issues all the time. It means that when we analyze
Let me send her a message.
Yes. I'm sorry about that. It's not the general connection because,
No.
but there seems to be a problem on Gia's side, which unfortunately we cannot solve in her place.
Okay, she maybe I can answer the question, and when she comes back, she can
Yes.
continue. Oh, she's back.
but now she has forgotten to
You are on mute, Gia.
But how come I disappear? I was at the front of my vision about race, class, and gender.
Yeah, you were talking about race, class, and gender. Do you want to?
No, I'm just finishing. That's the brilliant. We need to have the glasses when all the time when you interact with a collectioner, when you are selling a piece of an artist, Afro-descent or African artist, you need to have the glasses of race, class, gender. And you can check every day that we are not so far enough in the decolonizing minds, in the decolonizing capitalism regarding African arts, contemporary arts, and the marginalization linked to capitalism and patriarchy. But I'm not going to go to white patriarchy. It will be too far away regarding being imposed upon. But I think Wetsi and myself, we are saying about art and culture and autonomous space to relate how it's difficult sometimes every day without financial support to take your place and to create, to enlarge visibility for our artists, because the system is really tough but it's passionate. It's passionate.
Wetsi, do you want to say anything about the need for Black-owned institutions?
So there is a Black-owned institution means freedom. So as Gia is mentioning, it's difficult. We so far we have chosen not to be dependent upon, structural subsidies. We have received some money from the state or from the region of Brussels to organize some events. At the gallery, I also have received a grant to organize some residencies with artists, but those subsidies are not structural. They only enable us to do projects. This need really answers those Black institutions that we have created. They answer different needs into the communities. We need places where we can gather together and where we can be ourselves, where our identity won't be questioned, where nobody is going to ask you, where do you come from, as a first question, They're just like, you're just a person, you become a person. Nobody cares where you come from, whether you can cook pondu or not. It's just something. It's like also I have the feeling that we create a new identity of being Black in Belgium. And so we also create this group and this, and it also answers this need for belonging that everyone feels. Everyone wants to be a part of a group, of a community, of the society in general. But when it's not possible to feel that you belong to the society, then you create your own community. And I also think there is a real need for us to succeed in creating those institutions because, as you mentioned, it's important for Black people here in Belgium because we are also militant, we are also activists, so we want the best. We don't negotiate. We want the best for our communities. And when we say we want the African culture to be seen as something beautiful, as something valuable, we don't negotiate with that. We don't say, okay, let's take the money for me and then for the rest, it's okay, whatever. No, we don't say that. We want to really include the whole collective community. that's something important. And that's something important because the other generations, they see us, and we are all imbued into internalized racism. And it's important, even among ourselves, to have those conversations, to really give us support, and to really tell us what you say is not right. You shouldn't talk about yourself in this way. So it's a real empowerment, it's a real encouragement. And also, if we want to change the situation, we need to become an economic force. We need to become stronger as a group, because then we can also help. I don't like this word, help, but we can also be useful to the artists who are on the continent. And we can maybe replace, the white collectors, and start to have other type of relationships in between, in between us as So we also need to succeed as commercial projects, but also as becoming our own institutions in Belgium. But this, we cannot do it without the support of the mainstream institutions, of the mainstream existing institutions. It's impossible to do this on our own. At some point, we will also have to find ways to keep dialoguing, I think.
Well, I would like to pick up on that, but I think that it's time to see whether we have any questions. So perhaps we can take a few questions first, and afterwards see if there's some time left to go into some of the questions that I had. So I will read out a question. Gia mentioned it's past the point of negotiation with institutions as people are creating their own spaces. What do you think the role of the cultural institution is now, or how does it need to change in relation to these new spaces? Gia, would you like to answer first? I think there's a problem.
Yeah, a block, yeah.
Again? Okay, Djia?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Just quickly, when I say we don't negotiate anymore, it means that we are here. And recently, I think that 3 of the major cultural institutions, I mean, Munt Opera, l'Opéra de la Monnaie, Beaux-Arts, Fine Arts Center, and the Conservatoire Royal Conservatory of Ancient Art. I think they just open to receive a proposition for the administrative council. So they renew their administrative council, and I think it's more than 10 years that association are just asking to open their private board, the administrative board, the administrative councils of these institutions to welcome people of color, to create diversity, to welcome more women also, and to multiply also the narratives in order to create new kinds of exhibitions, in order to create new kind of audience coming to this kind of very elitist institutions. Let's say that Beaux-Arts, normally, they are dedicated to the people. It has to be popular, but it became the Munt Opera and the Fine Arts Center Beaux-Arts, just to code them, just to name them, but there are many others. They became kind of too elitist. And I think by opening just the boards, they will welcome more different people. But if you have your glasses, race, class, gender, you can read everything at any moment. So when you have to deal with a cultural organization, the first step is to check their boards, their administrative board. They check also the gender, you know, how many women, how many men, and then you can start to negotiate your price. Because, you know, if we don't do that, the next generation will speak and will have to do that. So we are ready. That's why the negotiation is now, it's not now anymore, okay, can I just have my name on the program because I'm just doing a slam poetry with different organizations, Black association or different. Now it's, okay, how much are we going to be paid, and how kind of communication to enlarge the visibility are you going to create, and how are you going to create a safer space for these artists or these personalities? These all questions are really important now. That's why we are not negotiating anymore. We are just one step further, thanks to all the activist work for more than 2 or 3 decades done.
Wetsi, would you like to pick up on that?
To what Gia is saying?
Well, what do you think the role of the cultural institution is now, or how does it need to change in relation to these new spaces?
Okay. I think a lot have already been said about it, but the role of the cultural institution should be first to look at the situation as it is. And because most of the time when we tell people there is contemporary colonialism, there is racism, structural racism in Belgium, they are surprised. So as Gia just mentioned, maybe it's time to put the right glasses and to look at the situation as it is and to recognize there is a problem, you know? There is a problem in saying, I'm not a racist, I'm really open to Black people, Arab people, or other type of communities. And then when it's time to hire someone into your institutions, you think it's normal to hire the same blonde 22 ex-student into your institution, and then you don't see there is a problem. So first thing I think is, if you want to make a change as a cultural institution, is really about look at the reality as it is. Brussels, Belgium, the contemporary world is a mixed world, and your institution, your cultural institution, is also supposed to be a reflection of the society. And in doing so, you also need to see how your institution plays a part into telling a narrative that erases the stories of racialized people in the society. We know that the history of Africa is not taught at school. The history of colonialism, the truth about the colonialism is not taught at school. But how can the institutions, cultural institutions, change the narrative? How can they influence the programs, like the changes of the programs into the universities? There are many things that can be done, but I think the first thing after looking at the situation as it is would be to listen to associations of people concerned, whether they are, Black people or African people or people from Arab communities or, Asian and other communities present in Belgium. Then it's also about working together with activists who are really active on the ground. and not only in going to the events and listening to what they say and being like, okay, we have listened and now we are going to do something. No, go. Don't be afraid of the confrontation. Don't be afraid of disagreeing sometimes. You know, it's important to be able to say, okay, I do not agree, but still we can work together. We don't have to agree on every point to be able to do something nice. So yeah, cultural institutions have a lot of things to do.
Maybe there is a question by phone, like Allô,
Allô, Tel Aviv.
Before going on to the next question that has been asked, I would like to point out, so I'm aware that there are two Flemish cultural institutions, and more specific theatrical institutions, that are currently led by two people of African descent. There's Giorgio Clo in Mechelen, who's from Ghana, if I'm not mistaken, and there's Melat Negoussier in Brussels here, who directs the Münzschouwburg. Now, I'm Flemish myself, and you won't hear me say, whereas you are Francophone, and you won't hear me say that Flanders or Flemings are less racist than Belgians who speak French. So what is your perspective on something similar happening in Francophone Belgium in the near future? Can you imagine that? A major, well, the Münzschouwburg at least is a major cultural institution being headed by someone of African descent? And would it really make a difference? I mean, what kind of freedom do you think that person would have to make a difference?
Gia, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm not nerd at all. Thank you, Fami, for this question. I just will throw a stone in the water by saying that we put again the glasses, race, class, gender, but we have to add also a very important element, which is which creates discomfort all the time, but it's the notion of colorism also. Is that most of the time, bon, and I will get that, but maybe it's the way the process of resilience to achieve, finally, to become completely comfortable, to welcome and to see, to witness Black men and Black women at the head of cultural institutions. But most of the time, till today, recently, we had mixed women. I'm a mixed woman between Congo and Belgium, so I'm completely aware of this notion of privilege that sometimes I have, or most of the time. But I would say that we have also to pay attention about that notion of colorism, to avoid to have only mixed people at the head of the organization, because it's a blind spot that most of the white institutions are doing all the time regarding on colorism and putting aside Black women. Yeah. So, and when I experienced giving a decolonial course with Hélène Debeuckelaere, we are both mixed. And we were, it was, yeah, I think it was Master 1 in anthropology, and we were coming just for 2 hours of decolonial, the arts and the universities. And we had in front of us a very excellent academic in anthropology doctor. He was a man, but he really had to contain himself not to explode. And because he couldn't support that, Hélène and myself were just giving some advice that he was wrong on certain points, because we have a decolonial practice simply, and he doesn't have. And so he was stuck in his academic aura and in front of his students, which, you know, international students, Flemish students. It was really a confrontation for him, and he became really rude. So I think that you know, we can open, and I hope that we will witness and see Black women and Black men at the head of institution. But till today, with my special glasses to analyze the civil society institution of big space, most of the time they are mixed. And it's okay if you are aware of that. Maybe it was the process needed to achieve and to decolonize the society, and for the collective subconscious of people to be able to accept and acknowledge and create empathy and safer space for these women, these Black and men and women. But till today, we didn't talk enough about the notion of colorism, and that sometimes, yeah, it will create more frictions. Time will tell.
Well, it so happens that Giorgio Clos and Milat Negousier, they are not of mixed race, but they are indeed, one is from Ghana, one is from Ethiopia, and that ties in with what Wetsi said earlier, and it's something that I've noticed as well, that white Belgians indeed will privilege anyone who's white, who's Black rather, as long as they are not from Congo, Rwanda and Burundi. Because when it comes to the colonial past, that's something that apparently they cannot deal with. But I've noticed, certainly in Flanders as well, that when you look at the people who are well known in one faculty or another, they tend indeed first to be of mixed race, and in a second instant coming from any African country that was not colonized by Belgium previously, or otherwise from the Caribbean or from the US. Wetsi, I don't know whether you want to add something to that, because I think we still have one question, and that deals precisely with decolonial practice, which is what Gia was talking about towards the end. But if you still want to say something, Wetsi, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to say that it's good to have Black people directing cultural institution, of course, and at the same time, it's also answering to the question, I think, about what is decolonizing. At the same time, it's important to really decolonize and bring an improvement of the situation, of the economic situation for the whole community, not only for one or two persons, because the tendency could be that, okay, we take one or two person, you know, with a face that we can get along with, you know, like, for example, I know myself, like Djia is talking about the privilege of being mixed. I know myself that I'm a Black person, but when you look at me, maybe one of the parents is still white, you know, maybe, you know, but nope, both of my parents are Black. But then, because there is this possible doubt, then, okay, maybe I have more chances to be where I am today, to speak, you know, to take the to take the voice in public for Black people, because I have a lighter skin than other. So we also need to pay attention to that. It's not sufficient to take one or two persons, to put them in the front and to say they represent all the Black people in the community, they're good, so the rest of the community is good. No, it's not true. We need to really improve the situation for everyone. It's good to put someone at the head of an institution, but then you need to give the power to this person to really be herself into the institution. Otherwise, she will do, she will just like be depressed and then and have no means of action. So it's also, that's why I also think it's important that cultural institutions keep dialoguing with people, with militants, with activists, even when they don't agree, even when they don't really understand what they want to say, but to keep dialoguing, because the people who don't agree, the people who don't play the game, are people who can really bring a real change in the end. And that's what you want. You want to have a real change. And maybe to answer these questions, like what is the difference between decolonization and decolonial practice? This is exactly what it means. If we speak about decolonization, how long would it take to decolonize Belgium? It would take, I think, 200 years of hardcore activism. Hardcore, like full-time activism, would take 200 years to decolonize the place, to take away the statues, to give the objects back to the African people in their own countries. But what we can do is decolonial action. For example, this discussion might be a decolonial action. When the museum, when the African Museum, makes a project and wants to know what the diaspora thinks about the projects, maybe it's a decolonial action, but it's not because the museum has done a decolonial action that the institution is all of a sudden decolonized, that we can say, okay, for example, if you look at the public space, it's not because we have put a sign next to a place with a racist statue or with a colonial statue, or praising a colonial soldier. It's not because you have put a sign next to it that the place is 100% decolonized, but at least you have started, you have done something, you have done a decolonial action. This is when I make the difference. I think it's important to realize that it's not because you have done 10 decolonial actions into your museum that the museum is decolonized. It's not because you have done even 1,000 of decolonial action into your university that the university has been decolonized. It will take time. It will take 200 years of decolonial actions to really decolonize and deconstruct the idea that Black people belong to an inferior race, that Black people are less intelligent, that Black people don't have the place into the current society, that they didn't participate into the richness of Belgium. All those ideas need to be deconstructed. This is what I call decolonization.
Gia, do you agree, or do you have something to add to that? The difference between decolonization and decolonial practice?
Yeah, I follow Wetsi. I'm not sure I will be still alive in 200 years. That's why it's important it's a way of life. And we do need expectation to see the society evolving. But we can't, it's not a job being activist. It's a way of life. And we need also to breathe, to relax, to chill, to care. Radical self-care, and it means also to let it go. Sometimes you are going as an activist to do a lot, sometimes you can't, and it's okay. that's why it's a movement, it's a collective movement. And I think that the victories are never definitive. So sometimes we are going to succeed maybe some of the restitutions, and on the other side, you will witness still structural racism against migrants and police violence in Brussels, in Belgium. So I think it's a way of life, it's a collective dedication that sometimes you won't witness because it's transgenerational, gift for the heritage of the new generation. So I take it philosophically that it's a practical, decolonization is a practice. And sometimes you can be wrong. Sometimes I can make mistake. And I got the privilege to have time and to work slowly to deconstruct myself, to take into account my family structure and also the traumas I have been through. So I have also to be very indulgent towards the people who are trying. We have limits, so there are some points we are not going to take time to educate or to just deconstruct people. But sometimes it's like doing coffee. You need to percolate. We need time to percolate. It's a long process. And I repeat, victories are never definitive. So even when you feel that, you have succeeded to decolonize the public space, blah, 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 it doesn't mean that it will last, because it's a question of transmission, of pedagogy, of inclusion, of all this notion. Freedom is no fear. It means also that sometimes you have to let it go, and you have only to rely on the political sisterhood, on the collective support, and on the radical self-care. So it's an individual way of life within a collective vision and sisterhood, I would say, if I can define the practice. And sometimes I make mistakes also, and I have to be indulgent towards myself and towards the other. It's a way of life, like when you practice yoga.
I'm afraid that there's something going wrong again at Gia's side, but we're running out of time. So I think, and as there are no more questions, I would have liked to ask both
what you choose to eat.
Wetsi and Gia if there is still something that they would like to say, something that you haven't had the chance to talk about, and that you nevertheless consider important before we call it a day. So
I would say thank you to Frame of Frame to have invited us for this discussion. There are, of course, many other topics that are important that could be discussed. I would say, as a last word, I think if you represent or if you work for an institution, don't take it personally. Don't take it personal. Everything that we said, listen to the Toltec rules. Don't take it personally. Just listen and keep working with artists who really have a message and who want to impact the society. I think it's important for the future generations to, the racism kills people, and it's an important topic. It's a serious topic, and just take it seriously then. Thank you.
okay, Gia, do you have some final words?
A new Bible being imposed upon, thanks to publikeacties, Vesna and Lucas for the trust, and thanks to all these being beautiful souls who really create that with dedication, love, and quite harmony. And thanks for the invitation. I think with you, Bambi, we have been the most, the further in the vision sharing with Anne Wetsi. I think we got time to talk about original stuffs, I think. So thank you to you too, and Evie.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes, I would really like to say thank you to all of you for joining, taking time out of your day to share this conversation, your thoughts with us. And also, yes, thank you, Gia and Wetsi, for not only speaking, but also contributing to the book. It's a wonderful publication. If you are a Black woman, you should read this. And especially if you are not, you should read this. And thank you to Bambi as well for your really insightful questions and comments. It was really lovely, and this is a dialogue that is also very important for Frame Framed as a cultural institution to reflect on and really take into consideration. So thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.